I think that's always just something that like is kind of like, you know, the fact that like Jesus and like the early Christians, they were doing good things like feeding the poor, helping people, standing up for the marginalized and the oppressed, and that's what like got them persecuted. It seems insane to me right now. However, at the same time, it still does happen in this world. For example, if there is an encampment of homeless people and everyone's like, you got to take that encampment down because it's ruining my aesthetic of my park with my nice house, and you're like, take it away because you have all these stereotypes about people who are unhoused. It should be the Christians that are like, no, we're not going to take this encampment down. We're going to get these people help. Even, this might be controversial, but harm reduction spots, taking that away in Toronto, it's like there's evidence that harm reduction is good for the community. It helps people. It reduces trips to the hospital. And yet people were so for it to take away this necessary resource that was going to help people. Right. Why? Because they were unhoused, because they didn't look like what you wanted them to look like. And it's like, no, it's like the Christians are the ones who should be standing up for the people who are oppressed. And you are going to get persecuted from that. You're going to get called, why do you want to ruin my beautiful yard? Why do you want to have these things where these people who abuse substances can go and use whatever? And it's like, no, as a Christian, you should stand up for the people who are marginalized, even if that means you're going to get persecuted. And sorry, this is...
Yeah, go for it.
I'm very passionate about this topic, but it's so disheartening when you see the fact that it's not Christians who are fighting against that. Sometimes it's Christians who are like, yeah, tear down that encampment. And it's like, I feel very strongly that if this was Jesus, Jesus would not be like, tear down the encampment. He would be sitting with the people in the encampment. He'd be sitting with the people who are using harm reduction sites, being there for them.
He says in Matthew 25, I actually was the person in the encampment.
Yeah, legit. And then, so I think it's just that those are things that happen this day. And it's like, as Christians, we should be at the forefront of like protecting people. And I think sometimes we're afraid to be, and I will admit this too, like I'm also afraid to be as well, because I know I'm going to get persecuted. I know someone's going to be like X, Y, Z, right? But I think it's like when we're following that righteousness, that's just going to lead to that persecution.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Trinity Talks. My name is Kyla.
I'm Melissa.
Britton.
Justin.
And we are here to wrap up our conversation about the Beatitudes. This section that opens Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, where he talks about all of the kinds of people who are blessed, and why that matters, what it sort of looks like for us to live in the way of Jesus. And it kind of ends on a bit of a downer. I mean,
a little bit. No?
Great is your reward in heaven.
Right, yes,
that is the end.
That is the actual end. Great is your reward in heaven. But to get the reward in heaven, Jesus says, blessed are the persecuted, or blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So, I mean, the reward is great. The road is maybe less ideal.
Yes.
That's the way to put it.
Yes.
So we're talking about persecution. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. Right. So first, maybe we need to talk about like persecution as a word. Like when you hear that word, like what sort of comes to mind for you?
Well, definitely, this is something that I've learned more, even just like last year, but there is a lot of Christian persecution that happens. Perhaps it doesn't happen in the Western world, where Christianity is deemed to be kind of like the dominant kind of religion. If you are a Christian in a Western country, you do have certain privileges that other people of other religions would not. However, this isn't the case in other countries in the world. There's a lot of people who are dying or who are being horribly treated, kidnapped, all these things, persecuted, thrown out by their own families in other countries because they've decided to follow Jesus. And there is an organization, I actually don't know if I can mention it here, it's called Open Doors Canada.
Okay.
So this organization, they specifically work with countries where Christians are being persecuted, and it's really prevalent, and it's really sad, the stories. I believe that recently there was children who were killed in Nigeria, or they were kidnapped, and they were Christian children. So it's not always like shown on the media. However, if you go looking for these stories, you'll see that there's a lot of stories of Christians who are being killed right now in countries where Christianity is not the dominant religion.
Yeah, totally. It's like serious stuff.
It is, and
Yeah.
I think it's just that, you know, we live in such a privileged place where we can talk about our faith openly. And I think sometimes as Christians who grow up in Western countries, we kind of take that for granted. Of course, not all of us, because there are Christians who do get persecuted as well. However, not to the extent that someone in another country may be persecuted. And there's very, very dark stories that come out of countries like this, and I won't mention them, but again, if you look for it, you will find it.
Yeah. Well, what do you folks think of when you think of hear persecution?
Yeah, I guess like the word persecution, I think within a Western context, especially within like Christian spaces, is something that it's almost like a buzzword that we use to talk about the oppression of self, and it tends to be used within spaces that, like, I guess we need to like define what do we mean by persecution?
Yeah.
Right? Because some folks will say like, because you don't permit me to, I don't know.
Persecution complex.
Yeah. And it becomes this like whole thing.
Right. So it's just to sort of finish your sentence there. Like it's people will say that they're persecuted when they don't get to do like sort of they're inconvenienced in some way.
It's persecution.
It's I can't pray in school anymore.
Or I can't force other people to pray.
Or I can't force
therefore
other
I'm
people to
persecuted.
pray in school, and therefore I'm persecuted. And that's maybe not the angle that we have in mind here.
And I think that's why when like what you're talking about, Melissa, and like what people are experiencing in other countries, when we do have those conversations, a lot of folks they're already tuned out because we've made the word, we've watered it down so much within our own society and use what I would define as minuscule things to validate it. And in some ways, we cried wolf so much times that it doesn't feel like it's true.
Sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between Christians getting persecuted in the context of a waning Christendom and in the context of a place where Christians are a minority, right? We feel like we're getting persecuted sometimes here because we're no longer in charge of everything, right? But someone who's converted in a Muslim majority nation, or you know, in India in a Hindu majority area or something like that, is going to face different kinds of consequences than us.
And then that text talks about like for righteousness' sake.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other piece. It's not because you have this label of being Christian or because you take on doing insert Christianish thing here. Like you walk with your Bible or you wear a necklace that has a cross on it.
Right.
Like and those things people do experience that, but in Christian minority countries, people do experience those things, but it's not just because of the symbols that they're showing. It's because of what follows up with that. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not purely ethno-religious persecution, right? Because, like I mentioned, Hindu majority, right? The Muslims are getting it just as bad as the Christians, right? In some of those contexts. So it's whatever the majority.
Yeah, it's not because you said because you're following Jesus and Jesus has led you to feed the poor. But that is historically, that is when we think of, especially like, I was thinking about this passage and I was thinking about it in the context of what happened after. What happened after people started to like take that name of Christian and the stories that they would tell. And what Christians were being persecuted for are things that many of us today, like as Christians, like they were like the church is begging us to do, like feeding the poor.
Right.
Like literally that was enough to be persecuted because you were throwing the powers that be on their head. Like they were winning off of these things. They were thriving off of these things. Like that's what kept power in place.
Yeah.
So by helping your neighbor, and this sounds so simplistic, but like that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're throwing a wrench in the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like when it comes to like even just like all of the Beatitudes, including this one, like sometimes you read it and you think, okay, I have to actively go find a way to get persecuted so that I can now, be blessed. And it's just like some of the other Beatitudes we talked about, as a Christian, you don't need to actively go out to look for it. Just being a Christian and what you represent in a fallen world means that you will get persecution, you will get pushback from people. Of course, depending on where you live, that intensity of pushback will depend. It's like, being told maybe you can't pray in school because of whatever reason. Or people are like, hey, why aren't you doing X, Y, Z when we're all doing it? And you say, well, I'm following Jesus, so I'm not doing X, Y, Z. And they might not talk to you or not want to be around you for whatever reason. That is a form of persecution. And then there's also, of course, people dying and people getting kidnapped and all these terrible things. And it's just, I don't think it's like God's like asking us to seek persecution. I think he's like kind of giving us this comfort that he wants us to follow him, but a natural consequence of following Jesus means that the world is going to hate you, and so the world's going to persecute you. However, it's like reassuring to hear that like Jesus knows that, and it's like kind of like you have to endure that because the opposite of enduring that is turning away from Jesus and following the world.
Yeah.
It's also not just the world. So Jesus says, they're going to persecute you just like they persecuted the prophets. The prophets were sent to the children of Israel, right? So it was the kings and the leaders of the Israelite society that were persecuting the prophets. It wasn't the Philistines or the Arameans or whatever, right? So I think we have to be conscious of the fact that when you choose the way of Christ, even in the context of church, people in the church are going to potentially persecute you.
Really, really good point.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's as Jesus says, the church is a mixed community. It's not.
Yeah.
It's wheat and tares, right? As he says in the parable, it's not just wheat. So if you try to live the way Jesus lives, you're going to throw a wrench not only in the way the world functions, but you'll throw a wrench in the context of people trying to use the church institutionally for their own devices.
Right.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that, and like just like I think that the word persecution is a loaded term, and it made me think, what are the things that, especially in light of the prophet piece, I think that's really important to note, because what are the things that we tend to not see as Christian persecution or persecution that happens to Christians for righteousness' sake, but truly is like taking up that cross and getting battered. And like I started thinking about it in the lens or in the like the context of the civil rights movement, and in like that in itself, I think is an example of how within our like mainstream Christian spaces, that wouldn't be labeled under, like, no one would think of automatically jump to Christian persecution and think of all of those Black and other folks that were fighting against segregation, fighting against the marginalization that was happening in North America. And no one would think of it like that. Or maybe let's like insert movement into it. Yeah. And we're not going to think of, most people wouldn't even put that in, like climate justice. No one's going to say, oh, that's Christian persecution. But there is a conversation that should be happening there.
Sure.
And
that's what King said in his Birmingham jail letter.
Yeah.
He's writing it to other pastors who are not supporting.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, you need to be more moderate in your approach. He
Right.
says, no, I'm doing this because of my faith.
The call was inside the house.
Yeah.
I really, really love that point you made, because that's so true. It's like there's so many political, historical things that are happening right now, and there are Christians who are fighting against, social injustice, right? But maybe because they don't look like what the mainstream Christian, stereotypical Christian looks like, you don't label it as Christian persecution. But again, like, when we talked about how persecution against Christians, it's not just like an ethno thing, right? There's no ethnicity or nationality behind a Christian. A Christian is someone who follows Jesus. And kind of in that spirit, like there's so many things that we learn about. And you don't know that these are Christians, Christ followers who love God and who want to love people, and they were being persecuted. And there's so many layers here, because it's like, maybe they weren't being persecuted because they were Christian, but they were being persecuted for other things, their race, their sexuality, where they come from, all these other things. But I guess just hearing what you said, it's like that still is Christian persecution, because they're fighting for something that they believe. Or
the Christians are being persecuted because they're standing with those oppressed folks because of their faith in Christ.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like there's all of these places where Christ calls us to, and Christ doesn't just call us into Christian spaces.
Yeah.
And that's why the term Christian didn't exist at that point when he was talking. But like the saying persecuted for righteousness' sake, like in that context, I think it opens us up to getting out of I think we sit in this label sphere where unless we can tightly label it, then it doesn't matter. But righteousness, what God is called to restore, is beyond just like making a denomination or a religious institution great. And I would actually say that's the counter. So if righteousness is coming into right relationship, then all of these pieces are brought into it. And that persecution piece, because there are people that are going to die, and they're not going to label themselves as, we can have that, it's a whole other conversation, but they might not be looking at it in the context of saying, I am doing this because I read I did my catechism and I read every single book, and it's because of this text that I'm doing X, Y, and Z. They might not have that, but there is a spirit, and I believe that's Christ, that is calling them into something greater, calling them into right relationship, and that will lead to persecution, oppositional forces.
Yeah, this world runs on the fuel of opposition to the kingdom of heaven.
Yep.
Right. So if you start living as if the kingdom of heaven is actually real, you won't fit. You'll be like a puzzle piece that doesn't fit.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, I sort of said that, that we end on a bit of a downer, but like it fits.
It does.
It fits with everything else that we've talked about.
They're all
in the
downers.
Beatitudes.
They're all downers.
Well, and
downers for now, but then things get flipped.
Yes, but then things get flipped. But I guess, like, when I look at the other Beatitudes, like hungering and thirsting for righteousness and meekness and all of these, like, peacemaking, nice things.
That was a good conversation we had about peacemaking.
I think there's a sense in which I can logic my way into, like, okay, this is why this might be a good thing.
Oh, I see.
Right? Like, I can say, okay, meekness, yes, it's counter to the world, but, like, I can understand why God would call me to meekness. Like, I can see the benefit of it there. Right. Persecution feels like a different category to me, because I can't logic it in the same way.
It's going to lead into the bit about loving your enemies. I think it needs to be read hand in hand with that.
Okay.
Because Jesus was persecuted,
right?
But he's persecuted for the sake of his persecutors, kind of, in a way.
Sure.
Right? He's doing this out of love for the world. He's willing to sort of face that. He's willing to stand up for justice and righteousness and all of that stuff to show the world a better way, even though they end up rejecting and killing him for it. Right? So there's a cruciform, like, cross-shaped sort of sense to this, right? I'm standing up for righteousness because the world needs to see that you need not be a manipulative, looking out for number one, backstabbing person to get ahead in this world. Do everything it takes to get wealth and money and power and sex and all those things. You do things differently. They're not going to like you for it, but you've borne witness and you're doing it for them just the same way Jesus did.
Yeah. So in this beatitude, the line itself, the blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, also comes with a bit of a postlude. That's maybe not the right word, but like it comes with some extra verses.
Prelude?
Well, no, because it's at the end.
Right. No,
so it's like
it is
a
a
postlude if it's any of a
Ad
lude.
lib.
Yeah.
Epilogue.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, it comes with some bonus features.
Sounds like we're saying Jesus is a recording artist or a rapper.
Blessed are you when you're just like the prophets.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Sorry.
So in that section, Jesus, so in the Beatitudes, he says persecuted because of righteousness. In verse 11, that comes immediately afterwards, he talks about, people who, if you are like called evil or like if people are like making fun of you and all of these other things because of Christ.
Yeah.
Not because of righteousness. Now, are these the same? Are they different?
I think they're related.
Okay, how are they
Right?
related?
Because you're acting justly or righteously
Yep.
in Christ's name,
Right.
Who's the herald and the substance of the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven in Matthew's terms. So you're living a certain way and you're proclaiming Christ together. Those things are always intertwined, and that's what people are upset about.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And it's also, it's a mirror of everything Jesus went through,
Yeah.
right? When people are speaking evil of Jesus, right? What did he get called? He got called a drunkard, a glutton, demon possessed, son of Satan, all that stuff, right? Even though he's just out there healing and doing his thing. Again, because he doesn't fit.
Right.
Jesus doesn't fit. Even though he's the rightful Lord of this world, he doesn't fit. And this is another great Bonhoeffer quote, right? Like when you run across Jesus, your options are two things. You're either going to fall at his feet and worship him as Lord, or you're going to crucify him. Right? Like,
Okay.
I think I might have mentioned that before.
Maybe.
Wow.
But that feels like a very stark contrast.
Right? So that's what's going to happen. You're either going to be like, yes, Lord, I'll follow you, like Peter, or you're going to be like, I need to eliminate this person.
Wow.
He
Right.
doesn't fit.
I think that's always just something that like is kind of like, the fact that like Jesus and like the early Christians, they were doing good things like feeding the poor, helping people, standing up for the marginalized and the oppressed, and that's what like got them persecuted. It seems insane to me right now. However, at the same time, it still does happen in this world. For example, if there is an encampment of homeless people and everyone's like, you got to take that encampment down because it's ruining my aesthetic of my park with my nice house, and you're like, take it away because you have all these stereotypes about people who are unhoused. It should be the Christians that are like, no, we're not going to take this encampment down. We're going to get these people help. Even, this might be controversial, but harm reduction spots, taking that away in Toronto, it's like there's evidence that harm reduction is good for the community. It helps people. It reduces trips to the hospital. And yet people were so for it to take away this necessary resource that was going to help people.
Right.
Why? Because they were unhoused? Because they didn't look like what you wanted them to look like. And it's like, no, it's like the Christians are the ones who should be standing up for the people who are oppressed. And you are going to get persecuted from that. You're going to get called, why do you want to ruin my beautiful yard? Why do you want to have these things where these people who abuse substances can go and use whatever? And it's like, no, as a Christian, you should stand up for the people who are marginalized, even if that means you're going to get persecuted. And sorry, this is...
Yeah, go for
I'm
it.
very passionate about this topic, but it's so disheartening when you see the fact that it's not Christians who are fighting against that. Sometimes it's Christians who are like, yeah, tear down that encampment. And it's like, I feel very strongly that if this was Jesus would not be like, tear down that encampment. He would be sitting with the people in the encampment. He'd be sitting with the people who are using harm reduction sites, being there for them.
He says in Matthew 25, I actually was the person in the encampment.
Yeah, legit. And then, so I think it's just that those are things that happen this day. And it's like, as Christians, we should be at the forefront of like protecting people. And I think sometimes we're afraid to be, and I will admit this too, like I'm also afraid to be as well, because I know I'm going to get persecuted. I know someone's going to be like X, Y, Z, right? But I think it's like when we're following that righteousness, that's just going to lead to that persecution.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, sorry, I'm a one-track mind person here, but
That's
Bonhoeffer.
Yeah. Yes, Bonhoeffer.
Again, in his prison letters, he was imprisoned by the Nazis at the end of his life, and he wrote all these letters kind of reflecting on Christianity.
Yeah.
And he says, Christians shouldn't be known for their weird ceremonial practices.
Okay.
You know, like, and I think that's what you were talking about, the persecution complex. It's like, they won't let me pray. They won't let me do Eucharist. They won't let me build my church building or have my music. He's like, do all that stuff in secret. He says, let your religious stuff be done in secret, and let the stuff you're known for be your dying for the world.
Right.
Your service to the world.
Right.
Right. Because he says all the religious practices we do can be misinterpreted by the world. They can be profaned by the world.
Sure.
They were. They thought they were eating people.
Oh yeah, the cannibalism.
Cannibalism.
Yeah. For podcast listeners, right? It's because people would get together and eat Jesus's body and blood.
Right.
So the rumor was Christians are all cannibals because they eat bodies and drink blood.
Right.
In the early years. Yeah, but he's like, don't worry, don't let your brand be the religious stuff as Christians. Let your brand be loving one's neighbor in the name of Christ.
Right.
For the glory of God.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be known by. They'll know us. What is that?
Yeah. They'll know us by our love.
Depressing song. Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll
know we are Christians by our love.
By our love. But
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, I forgot
Instead of they know we're Christians because we won't stop, blabbing about more rights that we deserve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in some ways, this beatitude comes full circle back to the beginning, because the promise is the same as the promise in the first one. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And as an English major, I appreciate the poetry of this. But what else does that offer us? Like, are we talking about the same sort of promise? Like, is it the same meaning that the kingdom of God, like theirs is the kingdom of God, is that the same here as what we were talking about for the poor in spirit? Yeah.
Sorry, it's just I think of like what Justin said actually, which is that all of the Beatitudes are supposed to be like, are what like the kingdom of heaven will look like, that upside down kingdom. And I feel like in some ways it's like, even they are talking about different attributes. I feel like all the Beatitudes kind of in a way just like say the same thing, which is that if you follow Jesus, you're not just a fan of Jesus, you actually follow him. That's gonna there's gonna be hardships. It's gonna be really difficult. However, that's what you gotta do, because that's what the kingdom of heaven is gonna look like.
Right.
And I was thinking, in like you were talking about the encampment pieces and how churches aren't even a part of it, and that's so true. And I was thinking the churches that are usually like very poor, their fundraising efforts don't go very far. But in light of that, I was thinking like it probably is better to be poor in spirit and in material things, and then be persecuted, because at least you have nothing to lose.
Right.
Like, you can. Like, what are you gonna, like, all you're gonna lose, you're not gonna lose the kingdom of heaven.
You don't see the mega churches trying to fight for the encampments. You see them on Grammy shows.
Yeah, like, but
You guys have mega churches in Canada?
not much.
I'll show y'all a mega church. Come down to the United States.
But yeah, like, maybe it's better to just be poor. It's better to have nothing to lose. Like, we talked about this before. We talked about like that investment. Like, if we are investing in this earth, then how can we prioritize heaven? And yeah, I think we invest so much that it is hard. So when the hard moments do come, when it is time for us to take a stand, it's so uncomfortable because we're holding so much. Like, I think of the rich young ruler, like, it was so hard for him to figure it out because he had, like, he'd built up so much here that to give up just a bit would have been too much. That investment was so heavy.
Sunken cost fallacy.
Yeah.
Right.
But really, was more. It's more beneficial if you think about the long run. It's also, I think, I'll speak like plainly. I think it's better for your mental health.
God bless.
Yeah.
But like not even just like having less materially, but to be in a place where you can do the right thing. You can live justly, knowing that like I'm not tied to any of these things. Like I can make the right move because I can say the right thing and stand up for people and call out really garbage things when they're happening in my government, in my community, in my home, because I haven't invested into what is so, I would say, corrupt.
I do want to say that I don't want to sort of just celebrate poverty.
No.
I know you're not saying that, but I also, that's one of the reasons why we try to alleviate poverty.
Right.
It's because it's not a great life to be poor. There are certain sort of spiritual potentially advantages, but it also sucks to be addicted to smack and live on the streets.
Totally.
So, but yeah, I mean, there's a balance. I mean, I think it's extremely difficult to enter the kingdom of heaven as a vastly wealthy person, but then Jesus says, I can even get those people if I want to.
Right. Yeah.
And the early church was subsidized by all these wealthy women who like, let people meet in their houses and stuff. But again, you're doing it out of obedience to Christ, not out of fear, not out of hoarding, not out of a zealousness for power. And I would love to see poor people well fed and housed and all that kind of stuff too.
Totally.
I definitely feel like, like it's like, for anyone listening, it's not like we're saying like, again, like we're not telling you to go find someone to be persecuted, but sometimes I think it is like every Christian is going to be given different gifts from God. And if you do have the privilege of certain gifts, I feel that, you know, we're not saying, you know, donate all of your money and now go live in a tent somewhere. It's more so like, since you are in that place of privilege, how can you then use that privilege to help those who are disadvantaged, who are facing barriers? So for example, you know, someone who, if you're trying to fight to not have an encampment of homeless people be taken down, perhaps you are someone who is more affluent, who might know someone, and you can kind of speak to people and be like, hey, like, I don't believe that you should be doing this to these people, so I'm going to use what God has given me to help other people. Because I feel like, because that's, the contrast of that is you just sitting there being like, that sucks for them. I'm just going to go keep making more money and buying more Bitcoin or whatever. And it's like, you can use that to help other people too. And it's a personal choice you have to make. And I think that's why it's so hard to make that choice, because you might not be gaining something in the material sense, but you would be sacrificing something kind of like for the greater good, but you still are in a better position than the people you would be helping.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so go back to sort of the beginning of your thought there, like we're not seeking persecution.
Some people do.
You're seeking the kingdom.
We're seeking the kingdom. And this statement for me is less of a like, go strive after this thing, and more of a like, don't be surprised when persecution shows up. Right?
Yeah, like don't have a pity party over it either. Like, I think that's like, the focus should be like, I think about this a lot in like social issues where someone might be advocating for a particular thing and then they become the point of the story. And usually we say, if you become the point of the story, then you're doing the wrong thing because you're detracting from the actual issue. So someone is fighting against, let's say, homelessness, and then now they become like, now all this attention, the story, the headline is no longer City Park has been demolished, or the police have, like, I don't know, formed some sort of occupation around it or something to keep certain people out of the park, who were sleeping in encampments. If that should be the point of the story. But if the story becomes, oh, Britain was arrested by the police and is now in custody for 10,000 days, and if I can get people to donate to me to get out of the prison compared to get people to donate to the residents that were in the park in the encampment, then you've missed the point. The plot's not there.
I mean, it kind of depends, right? Angela Davis was pretty awesome.
There are people, yeah, but like I think like for those folks, they saw their positionality, they saw like how they were able to.
They could bring.
Yeah, like they always like even like Angela Davis is a great point because anytime she got on the mic and like she didn't talk about herself.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, I've rarely heard her talk about herself unless it's in conjunction to a story, like talked about Grenada. Like there was a whole thing in Grenada, and she talks about herself in point of like, this is how I used the power I had as an American citizen to be able to support the folks that were experiencing like all this stuff. So yeah, like if you are people are going to call you names, let them call you names for righteousness' sake or for the name of Christ. Not because of yourself. Like,
Right.
I think that's the angle I think we tend to miss. It becomes a story about ourselves. It becomes a story of like, look how Christian I am and how they want to torture me as a Christian rather than the justice that we're supposed to be seeking in the world.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, it's not fun to be persecuted.
No.
Right? Like, there's a way to get persecuted. I mean, social media is the perfect example of this, right? You get persecuted, then you immediately parlay that into having some kind of audience or something like that that's following you. But in real life, I mean, one of the reasons why I think Jesus is giving us this sermon is because he's trying to galvanize us. Like, it's not going to feel like you're blessed in the moment.
Right.
It's going to feel terrible.
Yeah, it's encouragement.
Like the world's going after you, like the people who are not meek and not hungering and thirsting for righteousness are succeeding. Like everything inside of you is going to be like, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like people are going to be like giving you accolades and being like, you know, but that's why it takes faith, right? We talked about that on Sunday. Like it takes faith to follow the Sermon on the Mount, not grit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally. So as we are wrapping up the Beatitudes, I want to just like read them all in a row here for us.
Sweet.
And see how we feel about that. So Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." So when you hear those all together, what does that bring about in you? I mean, I think the first thing that occurs to me is like, it's a lot, but it's also, I don't know, it feels right, even as it feels hard and wrong, if that makes sense. Like, it feels like this is what the kingdom of God is about. And also like, wow, how?
It's kind of like a dare.
Okay.
Jesus is like, all right, you want blessing? This is what it's going to take.
Right.
But it's going to be awesome if you're willing to saddle up your horse and ride, to quote Stephen Curtis Chapman. It sounds like a great adventure.
It does, yes.
In a lot of ways, but don't kid yourself that it's going to be easy.
Totally.
And you know how like Jesus says like go and like make disciples of like all the nations. I feel like in a way it's like, especially when I hear about the persecution beatitude, it's kind of like a calling in a way of like, now go and do, you know, righteous things, follow me, tell people about me. But we know that there are so many people who've lost their lives because they've tried to share the, you know, because they've shared the gospel. They've lost and had to sacrifice terrible things. And it's kind of like just ending off with the persecution. It's not like Jesus is calling us to go and be persecuted, but in another sense, it's kind of like go and do this, but you will be persecuted. And it kind of feels like, but he's telling us to, you know, go and
there's a cost.
Yeah, there's a cost.
There's not to go ahead, but I was looking at the other passage that comes right after it.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, like, you are the salt of the earth.
Yeah.
And he kind of goes through all of these different analogies of like what it looks like to be Christian. And I just feel like it's like Jesus saying, be useful. Like, this is what your usefulness will look like. This is what it will cost you here and now, but be useful.
Do you know that was a big Christian term years ago?
No.
Yeah. In the in like the Puritan kind of setting and in Baptist world, the best compliment you can give another Christian is you're a very useful person. But it means useful for God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I there's a student I used to have that wrote a whole PhD dissertation about this particular Baptist preacher. And I think the title was A Most Useful Man. Or something like that. And I was like, that's really interesting.
Yeah, be useful. I love that.
It's also very Thomas the Tank Engine coded.
I like Thomas the Tank. I used to religiously watch that. So
be a very useful engine for Jesus.
Yeah. Like, what is the point of being powerful if you don't do anything with it? Like, it doesn't. Like, salt does nothing if it's not it seasons things, right?
Yeah.
It enhances the food. Like, be useful. I think we're not useful enough. I don't think in our world right now we don't.
Yeah.
The power that we do have, even the power that we can talk about the origins and all that stuff, but the power that the institutional church does have, are we useful in that power?
I have another doctoral student that wrote a defense of the Church of England being an established church. So, there's two countries in the world that have an established church or have a religion established with the government. It's England and Iran. And he's saying, like, okay, there's all these potentially nefarious reasons why this relationship exists, but what if we made it righteous?
Yeah.
Think what we could do if we did this right.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting argument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've just come in with, I don't know the scripture like chapter, but it's like the vague idea. Like when God says, don't be like lukewarm, you're either going to be hot or you're going to be cold, or I'm going to spit you out. And I know like, this is just what I believe, and I know it's like contested, of course, but like lukewarm is just like when you're not useful. It's like if you're going to be one thing, it's like either be hot or be cold, because at least God can use that for something. But I think a lot of Christians, and myself included, like we fall into that lukewarm thing of like, yeah, I believe in God, I follow Jesus, and at the same time, like I don't have any fruit. What is my fruit? And not to say that, like, again, persecution is something that you should, attain, but those who have suffered a lot for Jesus, like, again, not saying that you should aim for that, but that is something that they have kind of in a way gained. I know there's also like those two guys in the Bible who are like, I think something happened and something where they were like happy because they were like, oh, we got persecuted for Jesus' sake.
Oh, Paul and Silas.
Yeah.
And they were like chilling in prison and praising the Lord.
And they were like happy about that. And I always think about that because I'm like, I feel like being persecuted isn't a good thing, but they were rejoicing that they were able to be persecuted for Jesus. And so that's just like something I struggle with, because it's like, I don't know if it's a good or bad
because they
thing.
got to imitate Jesus. Right. There's that verse in Colossians that's, I fill up in myself the sufferings of Christ in the flesh. It's like the more Jesus-like I am, the more happy I am.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm at that point. I hope maybe one day. I
feel
believe
like we're all growing into that, right? Yeah. But also there's this, like, I don't think anyone is ever gonna, if someone has arrived, then God bless them. But I don't think anyone has. And
Rob Herkmans is pretty close, though.
Okay.
What a fantastic gentleman. Trinity Streetsville.
Yes.
yeah,
But
no, I think what you said was
Sorry.
No, but I'm just saying that to say, like, I don't think any of us in ourselves, like, when it comes time for us to make that, like, I've seen some things, like, there's moments where I look back and I'm like, wow, why didn't I stop what I saw? Why didn't I say something? And it's not things that people would say, oh, that's the Christian thing to do, but really it's the Christ-like thing to do. Like if I see someone like in the subway, I think is a great example. Actually, the other day I saw someone and got into a fight. This was a perfect example, and it shook me to my core. See these two people get into a fight, and the first thing I saw everyone else in the crowd do is pull out their phones. And it was actually my very unreligious wife who slapped someone's hand and said, "Don't do that. Don't record on your phone. Why would you do that? Help them. Let's do something." I love that. And yeah, and she stopped. She didn't stop the fight because that would have been dangerous. But she intervened in a way that she could. And I'm there just like, what am I seeing? Because violence is horrifying. But yeah, just like do like that act of doing something, like seeing people watch what people like record with their phones was disturbing for me to see. But I think the fact that she was able to like see that and say, I'm so disturbed by this. I'm seeing these two people lose their humanity in this moment, belittle each other, and I'm not going to just participate or just witness what is happening. And she stopped at least one person from doing what they were doing. And those are the moments I look back and I'm like, I didn't do this. I'm the Christian there. I'm the one that like has dedicated a good chunk of my educational investment into religious education. And still I sat there and I stood there and I froze. And the chemist, the one that wouldn't consider themselves very religious, was the one that moved and did something. And that's why I think like that term of like righteousness, I think is just, it opens us up from that label. Because that label I think we get fixated on, and it blocks us from doing the right thing, the just thing. And yeah, like I think we're all growing in that. I'm just say that. I think we're all growing in that. I don't think I'm perfect, because I saw that like 2 weeks ago and I didn't do anything. And but the Spirit can move us in those moments to do something.
I love what you said. It's like, don't be Christian, be Christ-like. Because yeah, like there's a lot of times where if you have kind of like that Christian mantle, that Christian name, you know, I would argue that when the world hears the name Christian, they don't think about Jesus. They have a very set image of what a Christian looks like based off media and stereotypes and history. But it's like, you know, it's like, yeah, just be Christ-like. And that can lead to persecution, but that's ultimately what we should go for.
Yeah.
And I love that your wife did that.
Yeah. God bless her.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of these things, all of the Beatitudes, it is, I think we've said this a few times, it is both like a thing that Christ calls us to and a gift that Christ gives us. Right? It's this is the way that you should be, but also like, I know you can't get there on your own. So like, let me help you. Yeah. And that's like what following Jesus is all about.
You're never alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Liverpool. You'll never walk alone.
Okay.
Sorry.
I had to Google that.
You're just like the plethora of like cultural knowledge and quotations and things.
Yeah, I waste a lot of my time consuming popular culture.
And following Jesus, except that's not a waste.
And and reading about theology.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of these Beatitudes, this life that Jesus calls blessed, is hard and beautiful and scary and I think worthwhile.
Yes, I agree. Worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's all worth it.
And the thing I think is so cool about the Beatitudes is the fact that it's kind of like, maybe, you know, the people that Jesus was speaking to at the moment, they didn't feel blessed. They may have gone through, they may have not gone through the same situations that current Christians would be going through now. But it's like Jesus saw, obviously, he can, you know, saw the future. He foresaw that there would be people who would face persecution because of they were following him. And I think it would have sucked if there was no Beatitudes at all and they were just like, I'm being persecuted. Now what do I do, right? For following Jesus. But Jesus kind of was like reassuring them from the very beginning of like, I know this hurts. I know you're being persecuted, but since you are doing it for me, like I see you, I knew this would happen. but I'm here.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes just give us the courage to keep enduring.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Thank you very much, folks, for this whole series of conversations.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been great. And thank you for tuning in again to this week's episode of Trinity Talks. Go back and read the Beatitudes. And just like think about all of these things that Christ both calls us to and gives us as a gift. And as you walk through life in all of its ups and downs, remember that God is calling us blessed. We'll see you next week.